So Sweet Française, which is based on the novel by Irene Nemirovsky, posthumously published in 2004. It's set in German-occupied France, a small town village of Bussy, where refugees from Paris are arriving, and of course the German troops. The story centres nominally on Michelle Williams' character, called Lucile, who is living with her very haughty mother-in-law, played by Kristen Scott Thomas, and they are appalled to have a German officer, Matthias Schoenaerts, billeted upon them, particularly since her son, Kristen Scott Thomas's son, and indeed Michelle Williams' husband, is off fighting for the other side. As a house guest, the German officer actually turns out to be strangely civilised and likeable and plays sensitive melodies on the piano. And wouldn't you know it, Michelle Williams' character starts at least to warm towards him, to the absolute disgust of her mother-in-law.
I don't know why you ever married him.
Was it the land? Your father lost all of his, so he sent you looking for someone else's.
No. My father was dying. Wanted to find me a good man.
A rich man?
What have I done?
I see everything that goes on in this house.
Please, he only asked to go into the garden.
You should have stood up and left.
Do you expect me to be confined to my bedroom
I
anytime you
expect
want?
you to be a faithful wife.
I am.
Then how can you speak? How can you even breathe when you know that your husband has been hunted down by these animals? When I see them, I want to rip their eyes out.
What's happened?
We've just heard that Gaston's unit is in a labor camp in Germany. Your husband is a prisoner of war. This German is our enemy. Do you understand?
Kristen Scott Thomas in absolutely terrific form. Michelle Williams slightly more winsome. So the story is they're living with this officer, and on the one hand there is apparently the beginnings of what may be an illicit, a taboo romance happening. Meanwhile, the town, the village itself, is beset with class struggles. That Kristen Scott Thomas is a landlord for local farms from whom she has extorted huge amounts of money, large rents over the years, and they are turning on her and starting a whispering campaign. And on the one hand, the story is about the small town, the village life, and all the internecine politics there. On the other hand, it is about this love story. That's a kind of putative love story, an emergent love story. This is the will they, won't they? Are they actually finding some kind of common ground? Interestingly enough, I mean that element of it, the central story with the two characters, with the German captain and Michelle Williams' character Lucille, is funnily enough the least interesting part of the film. If anything, that's the part of it. That's the part of the story that drifts over into soapiness, into melodrama. I'm not sure that we end up thinking that the problems of two small people amount to more than a hill of beans in this crazy world. To misquote Casablanca. What's more interesting is everything else that's happening around. What's more interesting is the incidental characters. And I think that what Saul Dibb and Matt Sharman, who's the co-screenwriter, managed to do is to draw out a very interesting picture of a small community in crisis, in which there's class divisions, there are social divisions, there are personal and political intrigues, all of which are rising to the surface. And it's true as well when it comes to the performances. I mean, actually, Michelle Williams, who I think is a brilliant actress and is so great in things like Blue Valentine, is probably here the weakest element. You end up sort of really thinking about characters like Sam Riley's Benoit, who is this firebrand character who's very, very pro-resistance, despite he has an injured leg, but that's in no way taking the spark out of his fire. You have, as I say, Kristen Scott Thomas playing the mother-in-law. You have Harriet Walter and Lambert Wilson, who are these two dignitaries who are made up very much that at the beginning they're unsympathetic characters. One of the things the film does is it constantly wrong-foots you about how characters are. They're introduced in a certain way, and when you first meet them, they seem like archetypes. They seem like two-dimensional characters. But what's most impressive about the story is that it's very even-handed about all its characters. Everyone is actually shown to be not quite what you expect. And the best moments in fact, the single best scene in it is Lambert Wilson and Harriet Walter, who are, as I said, incidental characters and initially set up as thoroughly unsympathetic, who have one encounter which is the strongest thing in the film. The production design is very good. It's shot in Belgium. There's a little town in Belgium they've done the exterior work in, which pays dividends. And the production designer on it got an Oscar nomination for his production design on Saul Dibb's previous film, The Duchess, which I like very much. I thought was really terrific. So although the story has a soapiness to it, and obviously the story of the books progress to the screen, manuscripts that were written in 1940, the tragic death of the author, the manuscripts then found in the 90s and then published in 2004. In a way, that story is more extraordinary than anything that's on screen. But in terms of what you have, I think it's a more subtle, more complex movie than some critics have given it credit for. I think it's very handsomely mounted. I also like the fact that the way they've done the French-speaking characters there is they're speaking in English with English accents. They're not doing the LOLO, oh yes, that kind of thing, because what it means is the primary language, this is an English language film, the characters who are speaking in French are therefore speaking with English accents. The Germans speak German and then speak English with German accents, but it kind of makes sense. Okay.
I like that last
the
sentence.
French characters speak English.
All speak English.
With
fine.
English accents, with definable class, so posh English accents, less posh English accents, okay? The Germans speak German, except when they speak French, in which case they speak English, but with German inflection, as you would hear it to a French ear. So it's completely consistent and it makes sense, unlike some of those movies we've seen in which everyone's speaking lots of foreign languages in English, but with strange accents. I think it's one of the cases in which they've done that very well, and it does make sense. So there is a soapiness to it. I mean, I think it's not hugely groundbreaking. It is in some ways. There's something slightly sort of safe about it. But I think that what I like is it's very good at allowing all its characters to be complicated, at unpicking the relationships between them, at being, much as we are as an audience, not primarily centrally interested in this isn't it romance, but interested in everything else that's going on around it. It's the background detail, it's the incidental characters, it's the secondary stuff that really makes the film work.